Hi Bobcats, this is Miss Lee, and today's video lesson is on converting between decimals and fractions. Make sure that you have your notes packet. If you do not, get out some notebook paper to take notes and work examples. Pause the video when necessary so that you can stay caught up with your note taking. And let's get started. To change a decimal to a fraction, we're going to use the place value of the decimal number as the denominator, and then simplify the fraction if needed. Okay, so we're going to be using place values. Some of us have forgotten about our place values, so I have a little chart here to remind you. Refer to it whenever you need to. Here is our decimal point right here, kind of hard to tell. Make it a little bit bigger. There's our decimal point. To the left of the decimal point are the hundreds, are the whole numbers, or the whole places, the ones, the tens, the hundreds. To the right of the decimal point, these are the parts, the tenths, the hundredths, the thousands. Notice it starts with the tenths, not with the ones. There is no ones place. Okay? And it actually shows you what it's going to look like as a fraction and as a decimal. And we really want to know about the decimal part right now, because we want to change decimals to a fraction. So this, when you have one decimal place, it's the tenths. So the denominator is a 10. When you have two decimal places, it's going to be the hundredths. The denominator will be 100. And three decimal places are the thousandths. Your denominator of the fraction would be 1,000. Sixth grade, we're not going to get any bigger than that. We're just focusing on the tenths, the hundreds, and the thousandths. So you really need to get in the habit of reading the decimal numbers correctly. Now, first example, don't say 0.8 or 0 and 8. You need to read it. There's one place value. So you say the name or you say the number, and then you say the place value. This is 8 tenths. So you write it just like it sounds. 8 as the numerator, tenths as the denominator. Fractions and decimals sound a lot alike, and that place value is what's going to be the denominator of your fraction. Once we have our fraction written, all we have to do is simplify. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. We cannot simplify any further, so this is our simplified fraction. 8 tenths is equivalent to 4 fifths. On our next one, we have two place values. When I look at my chart, two place values are the hundredths. So let's read it. 24 hundredths. Let's write it just like it's read. 24, that's your numerator. Hundredths, that's your denominator. Now we have to simplify. I know 24 is not a factor of 100. Be careful. You might be thinking 25, but this is 24. 24 is not a factor of 100. They're both even. I can divide by 2, but I also know that 4 is a factor of 24 as well as 100. So I'm going to divide by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. 100 divided by 4 is 25. 6 is not a factor of 25. The only other factors of 6 are 2 and 3, and neither are factors of 25. So our fraction is simplified. 24 hundredths is equivalent to 6 25ths. Our next example, what's different about this one? It has a whole number. So what kind of fraction are we going to be writing? A mixed fraction, a mixed number. It's going to have a whole number and a fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and put down my whole number, and then I'm going to look at my decimal value. There's only one decimal place value, which means it's going to be tenths. So this is read as 5 tenths. Now we simplify. I recognize that 5 is a factor of 10, so I'm going to divide both by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, 10 divided by 5 is 2, and don't forget your whole number. So our mixed fraction would be 3.5. 3 5 tenths is equivalent to 3.5. Next example, again, we have that whole number, so we know we're going to have a mixed number. Some of you might recognize the 125 thousandths as being 1/8, which is one of our benchmarks that we should know. That is awesome. That's going to save you some work. If you don't recognize it, then let's just go ahead and work it out. So we're going to have one whole, and it's 125. 3 decimal place values are the thousandths. 125 thousandths. Write it just like you read it. 1 and 125 thousandths. So now we're ready to simplify. I know that 5 is a common factor, so I'm going to divide both by 5. 125 divided by 5 is 25. 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. Don't forget your whole number. Are we simplified yet? No. So we're going to divide by 25. I think of quarters. I think of 25 cents. I think of $2. So divide by 25. 25 divided by 25 is 1. 200 divided by 25. Well, if there are 4 quarters and $1, then there are another 4 quarters, so a total of 8 quarters and $2. And don't forget your whole number. And we are simplified. 1 and 1/8. And we have another mixed number here. We're going to have 2 and 2 decimal place values are the hundreds. So 2 and 5 hundredths. Simplify. I can divide both by 5. It's going to give me 2 whole numbers, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 2 and 1/20. It's not too bad. You just have to remember your place values. And it makes it a lot easier if you actually read that decimal number correctly. Okay, it's your turn. We have 4 situations here. They're asking you to go from decimals to fractions. So go ahead and pause the video, complete these 4 problems. Once you have your answers, come back and check. Okay, let's see how you did. Number 1, 35 hundredths. Simplified is 7/20ths. The second one, 2 and 625 thousandths. Simplified is going to give you 2 and 5/8. 4 hundredths simplifies to 1/25. And the last one, be careful, because it says that Jaden made 85 hundredths of his baskets on the basketball game, but they want to know the amount that he missed. So if he made all of them, he made one whole, right? Subtract the 85 hundredths that he made. His total shots is one whole. Subtract how many he made, which is 85 hundredths. That means he missed 15 hundredths. So 15 hundredths, simplify, you get 3/20ths. Okay, if you got any of those wrong, then just pause the video, check the work shown to see if you can find your mistake. And now we're ready to talk about fraction to decimal conversions. Fractions to decimals. To change a fraction to a decimal, you change the denominator to a place value and find the equivalent fraction. Then you write it in decimal form just like it sounds. If the denominator cannot be changed to a place value, then you divide. Okay, let's try it. 9/20ths. Okay, think. I know 20 is not a place value, so can I change the 20 into a 10? Well, I could by dividing by 2, but I can't divide 9 by 2. I want it to be a whole number. So, can I change the 20 into 100? Sure. Use a scale factor of times 5. Use the same scale factor with the 9. 9 times 5 is 45. Now you have 45 hundredths. You write it just like you say. There's no whole number, so it's going to be a 0. 45 hundredths. The numerator is the number. The denominator is your place value. Does this go to the hundredths place? Yes, because it's 2 place values. Next example, 2/25ths. That does not sound like a decimal. It's not a decimal place value. So can we change that place value to the tenths place? No, because you want to leave whole numbers. You don't want to get decimal numbers. Can we change it to the hundredths place? Sure. We can multiply by 4. Do the same thing with the numerator. 2 times 4 is 8. And your answer is 8 hundredths. Be careful how you write this. This is not 8 hundredths, is it? This is the tenths place. To make 8 hundredths, you want the 8 in the hundredths place, so you have to annex a 0 in the tenths place. So this one is not correct. Here's your 8 hundredths. Okay, 1/6. Nope, doesn't sound like a decimal. Can we change it to the 6 to a 10? No. Can we change it to 100? No. Can we change it to 1,000? No. So in this case, we are going to have to divide. And remember the typo. Top in, bottom out. The top number 1 goes inside the house. The bottom number, which is the denominator 6, goes on the outside. We know 6 doesn't go into 1, but we've learned that we can continue to divide by adding a decimal and a 0. 6 goes into 10 once, which is 6. Subtract 4 remainder. We can continue dividing by adding another 0. Now we have 40. 6 goes into 40 6 times, which is 36. Subtract 4 remainder. Continue to divide by adding another 0, and we have 40. 6 goes into 40 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. We have a 4 remainder. What do you notice happening here? The 6 is going to go on and on and on. It repeats, right? So your answer, I'm going to make it nice and put a little 0 here, is going to be 0.166, and make sure you put that repeat bar to show that that 6 goes on and on and on. It never stops. So not every time can you change a denominator into a place value. There are sometimes you are going to have to divide. Now, if you're really good at division, you could actually do division for all of these. Do your typo, top in, bottom out. Whoops, 2, hold on, technical difficulties here. 2 divided by 25. Add your decimal point, your 0, and divide. Same thing for this one. Same thing for all of these. All right, let's come down to the bottom, 12/15. No, I cannot change 15 to a 10, 100, or 1,000. But I'm going to look at this fraction. I can simplify this. So let's see if simplifying helps us, or if we're going to have to divide like we did with the 1/6. 12 is not a factor of 15. Factors of 12, 2 times 6, which neither one of those are factors of 15. 3 times 4, 3 is a factor. So I'm going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Now can I change my denominator to a 10? Yes. I could also change it to 100. I could also change it to 1,000. I'm going to go with the 10. Scale factor times 2. Use the same scale factor up here, and I get 4 times 2 is 8. My fraction is now read 8 tenths. So you write it just like you say it. 8 tenths. This is 8 in the tenths place? Yes, it is. All right, last one, 37 tenths. This one is actually already in the tenths place, isn't it? But it's an improper fraction. So we want to go ahead and we want to write it as a decimal. So the best thing to do is to change it into a mixed number. So think about it. To change it into the mixed number, you divide. How many sets or groups of 10 can you find from 37? There are 3. 3 times 10 is 30. So this 3 is our whole number. And I have 7 tenths left over. Again, we don't need to change the denominator. We can leave it as a 10. And now we're ready to write our decimal. 3 and 7 tenths. 3 and, that's your decimal point, 7 tenths. Is the 7 in the tenths place? Yes, it is. Okay, if you have any confusions on this, go back, watch the example again, or you can ask your teacher. And now we've got 2 problems, practice problems for you. Go ahead and pause the video. Once you have your answers, come back and check. Okay, let's see how you did. 1/25 as a decimal is answer B, 4 hundredths. And in the second one, you had to do a little bit of extra work here. First, you had to determine what the fraction was. We wanted to know what part chose theater. Well, we know that 27 chose theater, so that's the part of the fraction, but then you had to add up all of these numbers to get the whole. So the fraction that you started with should have been 27/60ths. And then once you change that to a decimal, you would have gotten 45/100ths. Okay, if you got any of these wrong, go ahead and pause, take a look at your work. And that's all there is to it, guys. Have a great day.